Dear learner, kindly put your mic in the mute mode. Madam, namaskar.
Namaskar.
Your microphone is volume. Your camera is on.
Ma'am, you can start your class.
Yes, we will start.
With action visible. Use Windows Switcher to focus.
So, dear students, good afternoon. Hope I am audible to you. Today we will discuss about the nature of changing nature of the Indian state, that is Unit 11, Unit 12, the role of bureaucracy in policy formulation, implementation, and analysis. And Unit 13, if we get time, contemporary context of Indian bureaucracy. Okay? So let us begin with the changing nature of Indian state. What was the Indian state and how the nature has changed, that you need to understand. Now, since from the beginning, I would like to tell you that the development of theoretical knowledge on state also impacted the nature of Indian state. I have told you earlier that the 19th century modern state, you can call it as a modern state. The 19th century state was a minimalist state, because the individualists, the early liberalists, they wanted to give the state a minimum space, and they said that the state is an evil institution and it has only one function, that is to maintain peace and social order. There should be discipline in society so everybody can have a comfortable happy life. But what you find in 20th century, as I told you earlier, in 20th century, as a counter to the developing influence of the philosophy of Karl Marx, as a counter to the appreciation of the emergence of communist state in Russia, as a counter to uh, the belief of the world on socialism and the emergence of socialist groups in each and every country, the liberalists thought that it is time to bring some changes in our philosophy. And the main person who started the process is John Stuart Mill. John Stuart Mill, whose father, James Mill, was talking about negative liberty, or talking about utilitarianism. Utilitarianism means, since man is a rational human being, man prefers that option, makes choice for that thing which gives him or her more pleasure, because man is a pleasure seeking uh, creature, or you can say a living being. Man, uh, Jeremy Bentham and James Mill, both of them, they said that men are in favor of pleasure, and they prefer that thing which will give them more pleasure. John Stuart Mill, who was the son of James Mill, John Stuart Mill changed the situation. He was also a utilitarian, but he changed the argument. He said, you are on the one hand, you are telling man as a rational being, and on the other hand, you are saying that man will be happy with short term gains. No, it is wrong. Since man is rational, men will look for long term gains, not short term gains. A student works hard, wants to establish in his life, wants to have a very perspective career, keeping in mind the long term goal. That is why the student takes pain. So, John Stuart Mill said that, people will always look for long term gains. He changed the meaning of liberty. He said liberty does not mean that I should enjoy freedom. Liberty means that I should enjoy freedom, at the same time, I should allow others to enjoy freedom. So, this argument of John Stuart Mill ultimately expanded the role of the state, because who will allow others to enjoy freedom? It is the state, an institution which has coercive authority, an institution which works in public interest. That institution will be able to uh, create an environment in which everybody will be capable of uh, enjoying freedom. So, this argument of John Stuart Mill ultimately resulted in the emergence of modern liberalists who talked about an expanded role for the state. And gradually, these modern liberalists and the Russian communists, this together, developed a philosophy. And it is mainly said that this philosophy belongs to Jawaharlal Nehru, and Ebenstein also. That is the philosophy of democratic socialism. That means we like socialism, but we want to establish socialism with through democratic means. That means they said that we will try to convince the elites of our state to establish a socialistic society voluntarily, and will work for that. Then only a better society can be established. So just see, the more, and at the same time, they visualized a strong state in the name of national integration. So the independent India's state is a strong state, because we say that the Constitution of India uh, envisions a quasi-federal setup, means federal in form but unitary in spirit, means a strong state, because the center has more powers than the units. Therefore, I say India envisioned, or the founding fathers envisioned, a strong state. So, this is the state when we gained independence in 1947. Now, the state that India is having is a combination of, remember, take note of this point, is a combination of modern liberalist theory, democratic socialist viewpoint, and paternalistic conservatism. What is this paternalistic conservatism? Just remember it. What is this paternalistic conservatism? Now, this paternalistic conservatism is nothing but the nature of the then colonial state. So, actually, India witnessed the emergence of a modern state during the colonial era. Therefore, over the years, as we grew in age, the Indian democracy could not take note of the indigenous element in our Indian political system. India is an old civilization. Since long, we had a strong state. Can you ever think of a state which expanded from Kanyakumari to, beyond the Himalayas to Afghanistan also. Can you ever imagine that such a rule was possible with the indigenous elements in our administration? That the state that we're talking today about is Bharat. That Bharat, the state, the ancient Indian state, was quite strong. But when we adopted the colonial state, when we continued with the colonial state after independence, we never ever cared for all those indigenous elements. We never ever cared for doing research on all those indigenous elements which enable the ruler, the king, to establish such a strong state, by which our country is known today, that is Bharat. It is because since our leaders were having Western education, since our leaders had enough faith on liberalism, that is modern liberalism of 20th century, they continued with the colonial setup. The bureaucracy once is one such example. They continued with the colonial setup, but they introduced democratic socialism. They wanted to establish a socialistic society with the help of democratic means, but made the state the patron patriarch, means the head of the family, you can say, whose words are the final words, like that, because the state is having monopolistic power, coercive authority, a strong state. So after independence, though we gained independence, though we attained independence, but we hardly introduced participatory governance. Though in the nationalist struggle, many people participated. But when after independence, we established a state, we never ever cared for those who participated in the freedom struggle. We only cared for the freedom fighters in terms of giving them some monthly allowance. That is all. We never cared for anything else. So, Indian state was hardly a participatory state. It hardly had participatory governance. But the state was a welfare state because the philosophy of the state was democratic socialism. They wanted to establish a state in line with the Russian communistic state, but did not want communism or one party rule in our country. They wanted to have democracy in our country, so the leaders or the parliamentarians allowed a multi party system and wanted that people of people from all ideologies should enter the parliament and should participate in policy making. That was how they understood participatory governance. What was the role of the common man here? The common man was considered as a uh, passive citizen. Now you take note of all these points. So while writing the answer for the changing nature of the state, you write down all these things. Or if you remember these points, you will be able to understand your study material. Time and again, I am saying that if you are not a student of political science, you will find this study material difficult to understand. So therefore, if you link my lecture with the study material and simultaneously you are taking note of the important points that I am saying, you will be able to understand the study material. Now, since the leaders were leaders of the nationalist struggle, they had feelings for the common men, so they wanted a welfare state. They wanted multi-party system. They wanted that people from all ideologies should enter the parliament. uh, they but they did not consider people as active citizens. They considered the citizens or the common men as passive citizens. It is our country, so they should have a comfortable living. That is all. It is our country, they should have a comfortable living. So the state started, introduced many welfare programs. Community Development Program of 1952 is one such program, which is today, even today, we name the blocks as CD blocks, Community Development Blocks, because that was a massive welfare program, Community Development Program 1952, whose aim was to uh, to take those welfare policies to the people. So at the block level, more work was done for decentralization of administration, and the Indian state wanted to bring those welfare measures to the people. But the people were never asked about what they want. That is the consequence that we are experiencing with much pain today. There is so much protest, there is so much unrest in the country. It is because at no point of time, in the beginning, we adopted an area approach. At no point of time, in the beginning, we asked the people what is their problem. That is why the tribal areas, the unreached areas, remained underdeveloped for a long time. Today we are focusing on that. And that is the reason for which in 1969, Indian state had to face a very critical movement, that is Naxalite movement. And that Naxalite movement is continuing even today, expanding from, actually it is engulfing district after district, state after state, because it might happen that it may be there may be some truth in our doubts that they are being supported by our neighbors or foreign countries. Otherwise, how can they get so much no, inputs to continue the struggle? However, there are some groups in the country, they say that these movements are continuing even today. It is because the government is incapable of dealing with that movement. Now, in 1969, that movement started because the sufferings of the people in the hands of the jamindars was continuing in many villages, in many areas. Remember, the sufferings of the people in the hands of the jamindars continuing in many villages. We had many, millions and millions of bonded laborers in our country, because the jamindari system, which was introduced by the Britishers, continued even after independence, that impact. So against that, and government did not do any type of land ceiling. Later on, government came out with land ceiling under the rule of Mrs. Indira Gandhi, the late the then Prime Minister. Okay, so major thing that you just remember now, Indian society tried to create a space for modern state, and the colonial state continued because the constitution itself, the founding fathers of the Indian constitution, they wanted, the memories of the partition, the experiences of the partition were haunting them. So they wanted a strong state to keep India intact, to make India an indestructible union of destructible states. And uh, they wanted that unless and until we have a strong state, we will not be able to uh, put an end to all these dissenting voices that were emerging in the country in different areas. Like, we had after long period, Goa became independent. Goa became a part of the Indian state. Later on, Sikkim became a part of the Indian state. Hyderabad became a part of the Indian state. Jammu and Kashmir became a part of the Indian state, and Jammu and Kashmir continued as a dark spot on uh, Indian state, because the special status to Jammu and Kashmir continued for a long period, and many progressive laws could not be extended to Jammu and Kashmir, because Jammu and the Kashmir Assembly did not allow them to operate. So that was the special status for Jammu and Kashmir. So now you just see, in 1950 we adopted the constitution. In the name of national integration, we created a strong center, and the center continued uh, to impact the elite. And the elite also thought that the effective way of governing the state is to establish their monopoly over legitimate violence. Again, I am saying, these idea of a strong state impacted the elite, means the leaders, political leaders and bureaucrats, impacted the elites, and the ruling elite, you can say. And the ruling elite thought that an of effective way for the to establish, ruling elite thought this strong state is an effective way to establish their rule, their monopoly over legitimate violence. In the name of the strong state, when the elite became empowered to use legitimate violence, and this process continued. People stayed in an independent state, but they failed to understand, whether they are free, whether it is their country or not. Because hardly you find in those days, people could interact with the civil servants. People could understand the problems of the civil servants could hardly understand the problems of the people. So colonial state is the first form of modern state in India. Then we have the independent state in India, and the state that we developed is a bureaucratic administrative state. It wanted to implement the policies in a centralized way through the 5-year plans, uh, and the state controlled capital. Remember, take note of these points. The state controlled the main source, state became the main source of capital and controlled the use of that capital. Because state was the largest employer. State was collecting taxes. So state became the main source of capital and control the use of that capital. Next point is state only defined what is public interest. No one had any opportunity to define what is public interest. Now, why this public interest litigation, all these things came into being? Because, I told you in the beginning, there is amalgamation of three ideologies in the functioning of the Indian state. One is modern liberalism, that is the positive liberalism. Second is democratic socialism. We wanted to create a socialistic pattern of society with the help of democratic means. Third is paternalistic conservatism, which is a colonial ideology. The state is all powerful, all property belongs to the state. State has, state is the main source of capital and control the use of that capital. And state also defined what is public interest. So therefore, later on, when state appropriated individual land for the development of the country, to construct railways, to construct dams, to construct offices, roads and everything, the state gave compensation to the people. And naturally, so far as the Right to Property Act is concerned, there was at that point of time we had property right as one of the fundamental rights. So people questioned the amount of compensation they received. They went to the court of law because property right was one of the fundamental rights. So they therefore state found it very difficult to carry out developmental programs, to carry out to implement the developmental programs. So therefore, the state initially the parliament decided to put some laws in the ninth schedule. And also the state made this thing, the compensation, immune from judicial decision, that state is the only authority to decide what is appropriate compensation for the people. So this is how you see the paternalistic conservative ideology of the state became more dominant than other things. It is because the state was there was statism, means more regulation by the state. State became the main source of capital and state defined what is public interest. For every act, state considered itself as all powerful, the father figure of a large family, and tried to establish discipline in the country because state was having monopoly of coercive authority. So this is how the Indian state, initially you will find the Indian state like that. So the state was initially a bureaucratic state, a managerial state, and or you can call it as an administrative state. However, As years passed by, people gained consciousness. In 1970s, people gained consciousness. The equations in the state changed. People started doubting the intention of the elite, both the political leader as well as the bureaucrat. In the meantime, many theories also came up which criticized the Weberian model of bureaucracy, like the public choice theory of 1971. It gave a call for debureaucratization because bureaucracy exploits the people, maximizes budget, and you know the public policy is not public in nature. Rather, uh, politicians and bureaucrats taken together, they promote the vested interest of some interest groups. Across the world, such research were taken up in third world countries by Western nations that actually, brought a very bad name for the bureaucrats because the development in third world countries was not happening in that pace as was expected by the Western nations. In the meantime, Fredericks gave us a theory. Fredericks said that every society has its own socio-cultural context, and the bureaucrat might find it difficult to work in that particular socio-cultural context. So you will find there is a author, Rudolph and Rudolph. It is there in your book also. He said that uh, Indian state at times appeared to be a demand polity and at other times appeared to be a command polity. What is this demand polity? Demand polity is, uh, there is protest. People are following Gandhian method. They waged a demonstration. There is dharna. We have trade unions, and they put forth their demands. Authorities will call them, invite them to the negotiation table. Just like it's a Gandhian state. Authorities will invite. Will authorities had every respect for their dharna or demonstration, and will invite them to the negotiation table and talk to them regarding their demands, and will say, okay, you have 10 demands, 4 will be fulfilled and 6 we requires time to fulfill the rest of the 6 demands. These 4 demands will be fulfilled. If it is month of February, state used to say these 4 demands will be fulfilled by the end of May. Now please end your dharna or your strike. Now, many a times, people also ended their dharna because they thought, let us have the short term goal right now. Again, next year we will sit another dharna and we will put forth our other demands. So, this is how Rudolph and Rudolph names Indian polity as a demand polity which only looked for short term goals. So, incremental policies were framed. No policy was meant to provide solution to the problem. So, therefore, they called it as demand polity. What is command polity? State had 5-year plans. State defined long-term goals and insisted that these long-term goals will be achieved by such and such period. So this was the thing that you find here. And so what do you find now? If we just talk about the things, you find that the socio-cultural, socio-political environment of the Indian state was like this. Naturally, the bureaucracy will respond to that. What was it? Till 1984, excluding a short period when Janata Party ruled the country, 77 to you can say 81 or something of that sort. But however, from 1947 to 76, 1976, 47 to 1976, that means nearly 30 years, we had one dominant party system. People, people blindly supported Congress, Indian National Congress, because they identified Indian National Congress with the father of nation, with the freedom struggle. So naturally, they extended unquestionable support to Jawaharlal Nehru, the then Prime Minister, for a long period, because Jawaharlal Nehru was a favorite of the father of nation as well as a part of the freedom struggle. After that also, people extended their support to all other leaders who were also part of the nationalist struggle. After that, people, there was some confusion in people's mind regarding Mrs. Indira Gandhi. But however, when Mrs. Indira Gandhi won the war with Pakistan, she gathered momentous support from the people. So that is how what you find is that uh, mm, one party domination continued till 1976. It would have continued for more years had Indira Gandhi not imposed emergency, had Indira Gandhi not misused the constitution. It would have continued forever. I mean, for more years. But however, things take its own course, and Indira Gandhi imposed emergency, and people did not like the way she handled with the constitution. So they did not support her, and in the election after emergency, Indira Gandhi lost her deposit. People had voted her to power, giving 3/4 majority in 1971. But Indira Gandhi in 1977 election lost her deposit. That is the period where the global community, till that period, were saying education is the determinant of political consciousness. Now they said, after 1977 election, that education is one of the determinants of political consciousness, because the illiterate people in India did not vote in favor of Mrs. Indira Gandhi. That example is cited by all political scientists across the world. So, after this, after the death of Indira Gandhi, what you find is that gradually, independent candidates also won election, and later on they joined some other party. That is one political phenomenon prior to 1985. And second is, in many states, regional parties grew up. So the independent candidates also favored the regional parties. So these regional parties changed the equation of Indian politics. Instead of a one party dominant system, it gave way to coalition politics after the death of Rajiv Gandhi or after the assassination of Rajiv Gandhi. After that, means since 1990s, we are continuing with coalition politics. And 1985 anti-defection law put a caveat on the political leaders that after election they cannot change their party. If they change their party, they will lose the parliamentary seat. So therefore, before election, all these alliances are coming up. মেন্টা রাজনীতি যেটা নির্বাচন পূর্বর হচ্ছে, all these alliances are coming up because 1985 Anti-Defection Act has put a caveat on political leaders that they cannot enter into any alliance after election. Only before election they can enter into alien alliance, and they will declare so before the election commission. Now, why I am taking much time for this chapter? Because if you understand this chapter, you will be able to write about the relationship between state, society, and public administration properly. So, why is it that regional parties emerged in India? It is because gradually what we find is that, identity politics emerged. The marginalized communities, they started asserting their right. They formed associations. So it gave way to identity politics. They wanted that, since the Indian state admitted that these are the marginalized communities, scheduled castes, they are marginalized because upper castes did not deprive them, upper caste deprived them of their human rights. So constitution accepted it. Founding fathers accepted this socio-political economic phenomenon. They included reservation in the constitution itself. That was the best line you can say. Based on that, the marginalized communities, they asserted their identity. Similarly, the tribal community, even now, today also, the tribal community is yet to assert its power, yet to assert its rights. Because if we have any, Niyamgiri, the leadership was given by outsiders, those who do not belong to that area, those who are knowledgeable but do not belong to that area. But scheduled castes, they asserted their identity, and different castes in different states, like in Tamil Nadu, in Andhra Pradesh, all these different communities, they asserted their identity. So what you find is that Indian politics could not remain homogeneous as it was. After independence, Indian politics became heterogeneous in nature. In response to this, the bureaucracy also became heterogeneous. Though we think that it is Weberian bureaucracy and it should be homogeneous, but it is not so. Heterogeneity in bureaucracy reflects the social and class composition of society at large. Because we have the reservation system, and accordingly you have, while implementing a public policy, unless and until you believe, you are convinced that this public policy will serve good for the people, or this public policy will develop the people, you will not take interest in implementing the policy. Your effort at implementing the policy will be half-hearted because you do not believe in that theory. You do not believe in that ideology. So we need to interpret neutrality in a different sense. Neutrality is not to the leader. Neutrality is not to the not to the party. I mean, neutrality is not in terms of your loyalty to the leader. Neutrality not in terms of your loyalty, non-loyalty to any political party. You need to be loyal to the public policy you are implementing. Unless and until you believe that this public policy is good for the people, you will have a half-hearted approach in implementing the policy. And why is it so? Frederick said that bureaucracy in a transitional society reflects the social and class composition of society at large, and of the ruling class in particular. Okay, so why is it today? Since long, we have reserved uh, posts for scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. We have many in the administration from those two communities. But why the people still remains underdeveloped in that community? Because those who were selected, they also belong to the ruling elite. They did not bother about the common mass. Had they bothered about the common mass, no tribal area would have remained underdeveloped today. They did not believe in that. That uh, they also shared that ruling elite spirit. They did not consider, they thought that we have knowledge, we were capable, so we got selected. And after they got selected, they forgot about their village, their area. So that is why those areas are remaining underdeveloped even today. So this is not that I am saying. This has been analyzed through research by many researchers. Now, the administration in India adopted a structural functionalist approach. What is the meaning of this? Structural functionalist approach. Many theorists have said so. Because we created different administrative structures and we assigned them definite functions. And while assigning definite functions, one thing that we missed, that we did not talk about convergence of those functions of different departments earlier. Today we are talking about that. After today we are having, the state believes in the principles of new public management. State believes in the principles of new public service approach and considers that the citizens have every right to quality service. Therefore, all these things are happening because people are also, through right to information, through right to Public Services Act, time bound act, people are questioning the administration. So administration is also responding to the people in different ways. Now, what you find is that politicking has become very intense. In what sense? In 1952, when we had the first election, 1951-52, when we had the first general election, on an average, 4 candidates for a constituency. Today we will find, even, there was a research in 1991 for the 10th general election, for one highest number, for one constituency, 16 candidates. Now, if you have more candidates in every constituency, what is happening? Actually, the elite who is ruling the country, the elite who is framing the policy, is not having majority votes. It is having only minority votes. Because if 16 candidates were there for were there contesting in one constituency, so the voters were divided among these 16 candidates. So that means the winning candidate was getting only maybe 10% of the votes. But the candidate is the winner. So that means he or she was not representing that constituency. So in the process, what happened? The ruling elite lost track of what the people wanted, because they did not represent the majority. This is one of the, you can say, shortcomings of democracy, where we have a multi-party system and where we have too much politicking. People also contest as independent candidates. So what you find is that with increased social mobilization and political contestation, different political viewpoints, with increased social mobilization, more and more demands, more and more dharnas, demonstrations, all this, Indian state face the crisis of governability. Just understand this word, crisis of governability. That means Indian state, with the existing laws, lost the ability to govern. Why do we have today so many stringent rules and regulations? It is because of the increased social mobilization and political contestation. Political parties who are in opposition, they will mobilize people to put forth demands. And the state at that point of time will not be having the ability to govern. So this creates crisis of governability. So here you find two major things: governability and governmentality. As I told you, bureaucracy is heterogeneous, was reflecting the social and class character of the society. So sometimes the administrator might not have that mentality to govern, might not believe in the public policy to implement it effectively. So there you have the crisis of governmentality. But if the existing laws are insufficient to deal with the situation, then there we have crisis of governability. Okay. So today, what are the issues before the Indian state? The major thing that I would tell you before the Indian state is that Indian state pursues a policy of dualism with regard to religion. Why are we having so much problem today? Indian state pursues or has been pursuing a policy of dualism with regard to religion. In the case of religions of Indian origin, particularly the majority religion, the state intervened as a reformer. We have Hindu marriage law. We did not touch the Muslim personal law. Had we implemented the uniform civil code right after independence, we would not have been, would not have been, we may not be having the problem of communalism that we have now. So the state intervened as a reformer with the majority religion, that is Hinduism, and the state adopted a policy of retreat in the case of minority religion. And that has ultimately resulted in the situation in which we are now. That has actually that has led to the growth of all those communal spirits today, which Hinduism never had before. Two most outstanding examples in this case I will give you, which is there in your study material. In 1829, with the help of the British rule, we did abolition of Sati Pratha. Now, Sati Pratha is actually not a practice with any other religion. Sati Pratha is a practice with Hinduism. It was there in particular states in Hinduism like Rajasthan and all those North Indian states. Now, the modern state, decided to intervene in that process. Even in 1997, when Rup Kanwar was made Sati, and many political leaders participated that ceremony, again the Indian state brought a legislation that whoever will participate in such an incident will be considered as an abater of that crime. But however, in 1986, I am telling you the example, it is not there in a very clear form. In 1986, when Sahabano, a Muslim lady of 50 years, having 7 children, was divorced, was rejected by her husband, she went to the Indian court for maintenance. Rajiv Gandhi was a very progressive prime minister. During his period, only the Muslim Women's Bill came into being, but in the parliament, was introduced in the parliament. But finally, Rajiv Gandhi had to yield to the pressure of that minority community, and the Muslim women, Sahabano, could not get justice. It was told that the Muslim women has to go to the personal law first, then by getting that verdict will come to the Indian court. These are the instances at that point of time. In 1986, Indian state did not intervene in the affairs of a minority religion. So all these things, gradually has put the Indian state in a very, very critical situation today. And we have also introduced some popular, you can say, we have reformed the Indian bureaucracy. We have allowed the common man to enter into the bureaucracy after 1979 by introducing the examination through regional, through the medium of regional language, and uh, we have officials today. Some the number has increased who are having empathy for the marginalized community. Third thing that I would like to tell you is that um, gradually, the populist democratic populism has increased, which we call in the name of freebies. Some critics, they say them as reverie. Politicians, when they are in power, they try to give freebies to the people, and today the common man has has changed its attitude. You all must be observing that. I need not discuss about it. So these are the things that I wanted to mention so far as the changing nature of the Indian state is concerned. Any if you have any questions, please think over it. So, do you have any question, or we will move to the next unit? The next unit is role of bureaucracy in policy formulation, implementation, and analysis. Now, there is nothing new about it, because it is the bureaucracy which formulates policy, which helps the political leaders and formulates policy. The bureaucracy implements the policy and also analyzes it. What is this public policy? Public policies are decisions of the government, what they should do, what they should will not do. In a simple term, it has been defined by Thomas Dye that public policy is nothing but what the government will do and what it will not do. It is the, you can say, it is the output of government, output of the governmental system, or the governance. When you implement the policy, you find the result, and when you analyze the policy, you know about the outcome. So there is a difference between output and outcome. Basically, we understand public policy in terms of uh, what do you say? In terms of the systems approach. Demands go into the system, put pressure on the government, or put pressure on the elite or the policy makers. Policy makers filter those demands and prioritize them, and then they, as per their priority, they process those demands, and these inputs, the demands are inputs, and the output is the final policy document. The output is the final policy document. So the final policy document is actually prepared by the bureaucrat as well as the political leader. The political leader explains his vision and expresses his desire that this and this to be done, and the bureaucrat accordingly may inform the leader, boss, because the political leader is the boss, the chief executive. The bureaucrat informs the leader that this is possible and this is not possible. So, in close alliance with each other, the politician and the bureaucrat, they frame the policy. They prepare the draft policy. And the draft policy is put forth before the legislature. Many times also executive takes decisions, and the final policy is made. Now, seeing this scenario and the way we are having laxity in development or slow pace of the development, many critics have said that, well, the political leaders and the bureaucrats together are working for a particular group. They are not working for all the people at large. They are working for particular interest groups. Like today, one group say, like the Marxist perspective of the state, those who give a Marxist perspective of the Indian state, they say today the state is in favor of the corporates. State is in the hands of the corporates, though the corporates are not ruling directly, but the state takes such decisions which will favor the corporates, not to the people. So this is the end result of the analysis, that that this is the thing. Till 1968 or till 1968, when we had the concept of new public administration, policy formulation was the activity of the political leader and the top level bureaucrat, and policy implementation was purely the activity of the executive. Executive was actually engaged in policy implementation. But in the 1970s, this dichotomy of politics and administration changed actually. Gradually, the base of the democracy widened, expanded, and the policy process became multi-actor centric. Many actors participated in the policy process, intervened in the policy process. So remember, public policy making, try to understand the policy process. People put up demands. They put forth their problems. These demands, these problems are processed, and finally, the problems are prioritized. And in order of priority, the problems are taken up by the policymaker. Then, you know, the problem that the leaders prioritize or the bureaucrat prioritize, agenda setting is done for that. The leaders, they, because it is a democracy, the leaders through their talks, through their writings, they try to express that this is the vital point. On this, we want to have a policy, and that is called agenda setting. The agenda is set. Then you have the formulation of the policy proposal. Even today, we have many draft policy bills. One such policy bill is national policy for domestic workers. Right now, I'm not able to remember so many such things. We have, even today also, we have many policies in the draft form, because government prepares the draft and leaves it as it is, just for the sake of setting the agenda, that people should be mentally prepared for that policy. So formulation of the policy proposal, then finalization of the policy, and policy implementation of the policy, and then you have evaluation and analysis of the policy, which gives us feedback. When you analyze the outcome, it gives you feedback. Where are the gaps? So every policy is an incremental policy. It does not provide full solution to the problem. Every policy is incremental in nature. Okay. What is the role of civil servant in this policy making? The role of the civil servant in this policy making is that the civil servant will bring new orientation to the rules, new ideas, because they are knowledgeable person. Political leaders are novice. They are not knowledgeable. Actually, the knowledgeable people are the bureaucrats. They have the knowledge, so they put new ideas, they introduce innovations in the policy paper, and accordingly they prepare the policy. It is just not the policy, they also find out innovative ways in implementing the policy. This has been studied, and the middle level bureaucrats, like the number 3 and number 4, you can say, middle level bureaucrats who come in contact with the people, you can say the cutting edge of administration. These civil servants, they introduce many innovation at the implementation stage, and their innovations in implementation later on refine the policy more and more. So remember, policy formulation is not a non-linear process. It is not a unilinear process. Many actors intervene in the process, and give their feedback. Because in the modern state, we have political parties, we have interest groups. All these, they try to impact the policy making process. So policy making process is not unilinear today. It is non-linear, you can say. You can call it as multilinear, but it is non-linear in the sense that any actor can intervene any time in the process. A draft policy is there. Suppose a researcher takes note of, analyzes the draft policy and writes an article in the newspaper, and that article is quoted by many, then that is a challenge for the government. Immediately that is taken note of, and the policy is revised. So you see, the person who is not in policy making process also can influence policy making if there is some innovation in the idea or some new orientation in the idea of the particular non-state actor. Any individual can be a non-state actor. No, he is not in the state structure. So any individual can be a non-state actor. Okay. So as I told you, this middle level bureaucrats are called as street level bureaucracy because they come in contact with the people. They find out the gaps in the lines of law or in the policy implementation. So accordingly, they give their feedback and change the policy. John Perry told us that policy makers and bureaucrats frequently develop networks promoting common sectoral interests. As I was telling you, that the politicians and bureaucrats, they develop a network and they talk about uh, their sectoral interests. They work for the sectoral interests. So let me tell you, we are talking about, who are the policymakers, the bureaucrats, because the political leaders are ignorant ones. They hardly have any knowledge regarding the subject. So we have a ideal picture of bureaucracy, which was given by the German sociologist Max Weber in 20th century. Now, what are the features of bureaucracy that Max Weber gave us? He said that, bureaucracy has certain principles like functional specialization, division of labor, functional specialization, rule of law, formal organization, hierarchy, written records, selection based on merit for a particular job, standard operating procedure. That is also, rule of law means you can, in a simpler form, you can say SOP, standard operating procedure, for everything how to do it, and impersonality. That while implementing a policy, the bureaucrat should not recognize any person, recognize the socio-economic status of any person. The bureaucrat will treat everybody with uniformity. This is a very rosy picture given by the uh, Max Weber, the German sociologist. But is it true in reality? the bureaucrat. No, I'm not accusing the civil servant community, but the point is that every individual is careful about his own family. So, for that matter, the bureaucrat do not always avoid any conflict with the heavy shots or political leaders, because they will create disturbance in their life, they will hamper their prestige, they will transfer them, so their family will be at trouble. So all these things many a times holds back the bureaucrat from expressing their opinions. But few bureaucrats are there who are obstinate and determined to work in an impartial way, and they treat everybody uniformly, whoever he or she may be, doesn't recognize any person in terms of his or her social and economic or political status. So this is called impersonality. Now, these bureaucrats are in charge of policy making, policy formulating, and policy implementing. Now, top level bureaucrats are in charge of policy making only because they are in an advisory role, they have knowledge and experience, they have a permanent service, so they can inform the chief executive regarding the history of the policy, what has happened in the department or something. They have the expertise, therefore they can guide the political leader in the policy formulation. However, Guy Peters tells us that bureaucrat promotes the agency ideology. Agency ideology means ideology of the department or ideology of the particular institution. That is called agency ideology. If you are posted in a particular institution, you try to act as a conformist. You do not want to bring any very radical change. You just work as a conformist. You act as a conformist. So, in policy implementation, as I told you, the bureaucrats also take initiatives in implementation of policy. Today, all policies, time has changed. Today, all public policies have a portion on how to implement it. Maybe it is right to information, maybe it is Food Security Act, maybe it is the Land Acquisition and Resettlement Rehabilitation Act, or any other act also. Maybe it is the Protection of Women Against Domestic Violence and whatever it is. Today in 21st century, in every public policy, we have a section on how to implement it. Previously, it was not there. It was left to the discretion of the bureaucrats. So that is why many a times we could not get the desired result. Also, uh, there also the bureaucrats are engaged in policy analysis. Whether the policy has right now it is the practice to find out an evaluation by a third party, or even evaluation by the same, naturally the same official is not there. he might have been transferred. So the department itself can make an analysis how the policy, the what is the outcome of the policy. So this is the thing that you, because today we have a managerial state, the state which believes in new public management. What is this new public management? New public management means applying the values of the private sector to the public sector. Not seeking profit is the value, but making effective policy implementation is the value. Doing the work effectively is the value. So doing the work in a scientific way is the value. So therefore new public management approach tells that the state must adopt the practices of the private sector in the public sector also. That means introducing competition among the public sector. As we have today, Maharatna, Navaratna, Miniratna for public sector units. We do not intend to bail out the public sector as we were doing previously. We pump more money into sick units. I wanted to revive them. Today, the idea is, or the ideology you can say is, to disinvest the sick unit. And this is the scenario after the introduction of the new economic policy, or in 1990s, in a post 1990 era, you can say. So this is all about the second unit that we discussed. Remember, you have many key concepts in every unit. You must well versed with this key concept. These key concepts might come, you have 2-mark questions, 1-mark questions. So these key concepts might come as short notes like that. So in the previous, we had something called Oriental despotism. Oriental despotism, the word refers to the kingdoms in Asia. Asia is known as the Orient, and the concept refers to the kingdoms in Asia where the despotic rules were prevalent. So these are called as Oriental despotism. This includes tyranny, autocracy, absolutism, dictatorship, totalitarianism, all these things. Like we can call the Nanda dynasty, against whom Chanakya prepared his student to revive the kingdom. So you can call that stage kingdom or the king as a tyrant. This is actually called Oriental despotism. Tyrant means the ruler who is not interested in the well-being of the people. They were named as despots. Many times we also call some kings as benevolent despots. They are despots, but they looked for the well-being of the people. There is another word which is there, that is called consociational state. Consociational state means a plural society, or a state which allows all the groups to operate. The state which has major internal division along ethnic, religious, or linguistic lines. So if you call Indian state as a consociational state, we will not be wrong. And you all know public interest litigation, which has come out as a part of judicial review. Because when the state became the only authority to define public interest. What is public interest? People registered against it. That at times they went to the court of law in the name of public interest to counter the arbitrary action of the state. That means they countered the way the state defined what is public interest. Now yesterday I was telling you how the citizen can interact with the state in different ways. Here the citizen is a litigant, questioning the state, appealing against the state in the court of law, and questioning the definition of public interest in a given situation. In the present, the unit that I discussed today, there are many concepts here which you need to also understand, because these concepts might come as questions, maybe one mark questions or 2 mark question in your examination. That is Delphi technique. Delphi technique is a research method which was introduced by United States of America by a person called N.C. Dalke for Rand Corporation. It is a decision-making tool. This involves a panel of experts drawn from within the organization and outside the organization, and they are told to examine a particular problem. Each expert is told to predict the future. If this problem continues, what will be the situation? They are told to make predictions about the problem, and a composite feedback from the experts is secured. Based on that information available, forecasting is done or a decision is made. How intense is the problem? What will be the consequence if the problem continues? That is actually the content of research under this Delphi technique. It is considered as a very, very effective decision making tool. Okay. Now there is another thing written there: evaluation synthesis approach. All these are part of your public policy syllabus. Here, you make a synthesis of all of the results of the findings of evaluation of policies by different researchers. Front-end analysis. It means the review of the kind of work which is being undertaken before a decision is taken to go ahead for framing a policy on a particular issue. That means you make a research on the problem. The government itself also initiates research, and the researching agencies are like, see, Indian Institute of Population Studies, IIPS, which was in use for suspending the director, which gave us the National Family Health Survey data. So many a times this front-end analysis by research organizations also help in policy making. Parastata institutions are advisory institutions or quasi-state autonomous institutions like UGC, like ISRO. They are called as parastata institutions. What is simulation technique? It models real life situations or variables. These are very common things. Like the police creates a scene of the real life situation and tries to study the uh, the criminal, the mind of the criminal. If the criminal has committed the crime, he or she will act accordingly in the replay of the situation. This is actually called the simulation technique. I have already discussed with you the street level bureaucracy. Okay, so we have completed 2 units. Now we can discuss about the unit 13, that is contemporary context of bureaucracy. What is actually the model of the bureaucracy right now? Now if you have any doubts, you can ask me, otherwise we will proceed.
Ma'am, presently there is no doubt, but today I'm reading about the topics again, and tomorrow I will ask any if I have any doubt.
1 minute. Yes. Please tell me the question.
Ma'am,
Pragya
today is not.
speaking.
Ma'am, presently I don't have any issues. A
I'm
little
not
bit.
I'm not able to hear you. Please be louder.
Ma'am, presently I don't have any doubts. Firstly, I complete the units again, reading again, and tomorrow I will ask you if I have any doubts about these topics.
Okay, you have no doubts today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Because I did not cover the unit 11 and 12, so don't have the proper knowledge about it. So,
Okay.
ma'am, the one doubt is that everybody know that the organization, the bureaucracy is handling by the private sectors. Then why nobody complain about it? Because
Organization is
ma'am, you telling before that in our government handling by the private sectors,
no, not
not by
no.
the politicians.
Our government is handled by the private sector. I didn't tell you like that.
No,
You
ma'am.
have
Means I don't.
misunderstood. See, there is a in 1988. It is the scenario across the world. In 1988, a new approach was discussed in the second Minobro conference by the theorists in public administration. They gave us a new idea called new public management approach. Now, government was not considering the practice of taking the help of the managerial knowledge. Management trainees were recruited by private sector, not by public sector. Government also did not think of giving training in management to the civil servants also. So, those who were in government or in the charge of governance, they were not having the knowledge of management, because what is the structure of examination for the civil service. whether it is state civil service or it is union civil service. We recruit generalists. We are not recruiting specialists. We are recruiting generalists. And they are well versed in the subject which they opt as optional and general studies. And we have a personality test by conducting the interview just to know what is the presentness of mind of the person, what is the problem solving ability of the candidate, like that. At no point of time we teach them managerial technique. We were not teaching them managerial techniques, but today we have understood that it is so. So what is this new public management technique? A new public management technique, I am just giving you the features like that. It talks about performance appraisal based on a scientific method. It talks about target oriented governance. That means more focus on result. Whether you are working or not doesn't matter. But if you are not, even if you are in the office from 10 to 5, if there is no target achieved, then you are not a good officer. That is what is the managerial inputs introduced in administration. Reinventing government, because people criticize that government do not have the practice of abandoning old policies. They continue the policy and always keep on doing incremental policies. So what is Peter Drucker, the management guru, said? What is bad if we abandon a policy which is not paying us anything? This is the thing. So that is another way, that reinventing government always. And also the government, so the each and every department of the state must mobilize its resources. At one point of time, huge amount of money was coming to every department. Right now every department is told to mobilize its own resources. Minimum amount of money is given, but every department is told to mobilize its own resources. That is why today we are looking for projects, we are looking for seminar grants in universities in the different departments, because at one point of time huge amount of money was coming to run the department. And I will tell you, today at this point of time, we get to run our department only 20,000 rupees, which is not sufficient to buy papers or the requirements to meet the contingency requirements of the office for 1 year. And then what do? We mobilize resources from different sources which were not done previously. So that are the private sector elements to be introduced in the public sector. The public sector officials should be accountable for not achieving the target. Is it clear to you?
Yes, ma'am.
We are not telling that the public sector should also run after profit. It is not like so. Public sector will always aim at well-being of the citizens. It will aim at integrated development of the people. But accountability that is there in the private sector was not introduced in the public sector. It was there only in letter but not in spirit. Today that letter and spirit has been introduced in a clear term, that is there in Right to Information Act, that is there in the MGNREGS Act. If somebody demands employment and you are not capable of giving employment within 15 days, and the person is having a job card, you are bound to give unemployment allowance. That is also there in the Food Security Act. That is also there in the Right to Information Act. If you fail to give the information, you are you will be paying penalty. That is there in the law. Now, these are the examples of new public management that has been adopted by the government. Okay. Any other question? No, this is good that you have asked the question, and I take for granted that you are able to understand it. But if any one of you should not carry a wrong in understanding of the subject. That will not help you to understand your study material. Now let us, I will not try, and there is no time to discuss about Unit 13, but I will just introduce what is there, the background. Contemporary context of Indian bureaucracy. This unit tries to understand bureaucracy in terms of the Weberian model. I have already told you what are the features of Weberian bureaucracy. Let me tell you one thing. Prior to Max Weber, the German sociologist, that means prior to the 20 beginning of 20th century, the bureaucrats were considered in a bureaucracy was looked down upon in a very negative sense. Authors only emphasized on the behavioral aspect of bureaucracy. What is the behavioral aspect of bureaucracy? Arrogance of the officials. People in third world countries, they had observed those behavioral features in the colonial bureaucracy. The civil servants in the colonies. Superiority complex of the officials, arrogance of the officials. Officials were not pro people. Officials were not going to the people, to the doorsteps of the people, were just sitting in a very comfortable position. I'm talking about the officials in France, in United Kingdom, in 18th and 19th century. In all those European countries, they had a bureaucracy, and the bureaucracy was always looked down upon by people because those were not considered as pro people. People had some internal fear towards the bureaucracy. Max Weber, for the first time, he analyzed capitalism and said, wherever there is an industrial society, rational legal authority will exist. Because without rational legal authority, he talked about three types of authority: traditional authority, charismatic authority, and rational legal authority. So Max Weber analyzed the industrial societies, the capitalistic societies, and said that in all industrial society, an essential element of this industrial society is bureaucracy. Without a rational legal authority, these industrial societies cannot run. Because unless and until you recruit persons who are having ability, no company, no corporation can run, no company uh, can continue to operate. So when he, if you analyze Max Weber's philosophy, you will find that Max Weber is very, recognizes the negative features of bureaucracy. Max Weber has also pointed out the behavioral aspect of bureaucracy, the structural aspect and the behavioral aspect. But he says the structural aspect is a permanent feature of any industrial society. And the structural aspect, as I told you now, functional specialization, rule of law, recruitment based on merit, impersonality, uniformity, hierarchy. The structure is hierarchical. We think that one person is taking decision. No, every decision is taken in a plural way. The file moves from one table to another. Why? Because it is ensured that for a particular decision, multiple people are accountable for that, for taking that decision. So decision is it is a result of a plural process. It is not a it is not the decision of any one single person. So that is actually the implication of a hierarchical structure. Since we have a hierarchical structure, decision making takes time. But how much time it should take, it is not written anywhere. Unless and until we have a time bound act, it is not written anywhere. So that is where the bureaucrat expresses its behavior. No, you have delay in delivering services. So we have the time bound act or new public service approach. We designate a person. The chair has a designation. Bureaucracy does not recognize any person. Bureaucracy only recognizes the official designation. So there comes impartiality. Because when you are on that chair, you are uh, mandated to treat every client or every citizen uniformly. So that is the meaning of impersonality or uniformity. Laws should be uniformly applicable to each and everyone in the country, rich or poor, educated or uneducated, everybody. If somebody is coming to get the service, must get the service in the maximum possible time, in a minimum possible time, not maximum possible time. So therefore, since the civil servants develop the behavioral aspect of delaying, that is called red tapism. So today we have the Right to Public Service Act. In Odisha, we have the Odisha Right to Public Service Act, which was enacted in 2012. But even today, many public agencies have not followed that act. ORTPS is not followed by many of these old universities. I am a part of Utkal University. 15 services come under ORTPS. But the university is yet to implement the ORTPS Act. So this is how we will analyze the contemporary context of Indian bureaucracy, that is Unit 13. Okay, in the next class. I hope this is time to wind up the class. We will end the class here. So good night. I am leaving.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, can you please let us know tomorrow which units you are going to discuss, ma'am?
Yes, 13, 14, 15.
Okay, ma'am. So we will go through it
We
previously.
have
Yes,
discussed
ma'am.
half of 13 unit.
Yes, ma'am.
So now we will discuss about the challenges to traditional bureaucratic paradigm, and that is unit 15, and unit 14, impact of globalization on administration.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good night.
Good night, ma'am.